Well, I was an elected spokeswoman for the Women's Equality Party about 4 years ago. I was democratically elected, and this position was taken off me rather swiftly when I expressed the view on a radio programme, The Moral Maze actually, that I found the idea of medicalising children very problematic and disturbing.
When you say medicalising children?
I mean that children are put through a medical process of hormone blockers, and which often lead to sex hormones and surgery, on the basis that when they're a child or a young person, they experience themselves, or they would like to belong to the other sex. And I simply made the argument on that radio programme and through a book that I had co-edited that children should be allowed to go through childhood and adolescence, and then whatever they did as an adult was up to them. However they identified, that was fine, but childhood should be a protected space where children are allowed to go through developmental stages, find out who they are or who they're not, etc., as we've all done as children and adolescents. And this was regarded as such a transphobic statement to have made that the end result was that I was actually, my position was taken off me on the basis that I had been bigoted, prejudiced, and over the succeeding 4 years, I've been more and more immersed in this topic and realised that it's very difficult to have a discussion about this, because the minute you express any view which might just be calling into question, particularly about children, whether they are inherently trans, if there is such a thing, or whether they're just experimenting with what it is to be a boy or a girl, is itself seen as a hateful position to take.
It just, I mean, from just a person on the streets perspective, it feels like a projection, almost like a form of misogyny, actually. That's how I see it, because it feels as though you are being forced to acknowledge that the word woman can now encompass so many other things, when biologically woman is woman because of the chromosomes, and it's a biological fact. How can that be challenged in the way it is?
You're right. So the issue of children links into the issue of women's rights. Right. Now, I've just partially heard the discussion that's been going on, so I can't particularly connect up with what other speakers have said, because, as you know, I've just arrived. Yeah. But it seems that what I'm going to call the ideology of gender identity, that somehow we're born with a gender identity, and this supersedes biological sex, is something that we really need to question, because what it has led to is the idea that if a person identifies as, if a male-bodied person identifies as a woman, then that person actually is a woman and can trump biological women in many different ways, going, all the protected spaces that we know about, but including being shortlisted on all women shortlists and so on. So it's quite a significant thing that's happening in society at the moment, and I'm enabling this discussion.